Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Student Influencers podcast. My name is Leslie, and today we're excited to have Emily here with us. So welcome, Emily. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
We're excited to have you.
Yeah, this is definitely my first interview, so I'm very excited for this.
Yeah, well, we're excited to hear what you have to say, too. So basically, we're going to start with some kind of get to know you questions. So we can begin with, where are you currently located?
Well, I live in College Park, Maryland. My hometown is Baltimore County, but since I have an apartment near campus, I get to stay here. So even though we're quarantining, I get to have my apartment.
Right. Well, that must be, at least you have your own space, I guess. You don't have to go home.
Yeah, it's good and bad. Sometimes I miss it, but it is really nice to have your own space.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess with all the technology we have now, it's not like you can't get in touch with people if you need to.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I still have my internship, so I'm able to do that online, and I'm still doing classes. So it's been pretty nice to kind of not have to leave your bed to go to class.
Where's your internship?
I work with Senator Jim Rosapep for the nonprofit organization that he is the chair of. So it's a Romanian American organization called Alianța, and I work as an intern sending emails and trying to basically boost our mission. And it's kind of hard now with COVID-19, but we're doing our best.
But you're able to do some of that online?
Oh yeah, yeah. A lot of it is Zoom calls and a lot of phone interviews and lots of emails. So.
Well, that's awesome that you can still do that and you can still get that those hours in. That sounds like a really great place to be doing your internship.
Yeah,
Like it's very
yeah,
positive.
I really enjoy it. He's a really good person to work for. He knows lots of people and he's got great energy.
That's awesome. That's definitely a really good quality you want in someone to run an organization that's just helps so many people, right?
Oh yeah, especially Romania. Some parts of it experience lots of poverty, so he's really enthusiastic about a lot of the causes. And he used to be ambassador to Romania for the United States, so he's got that experience. And I myself, I'm not Romanian, but I feel like I have this love for the country just from doing the work.
That's amazing. That must make you feel really good too, being a
Yeah,
part of something that's so valuable.
yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
Where were you born? Were you born
So
there? Or-
no, I was actually born in California. My family is all from the West Coast, but then we moved to Maryland shortly when I was 2, and I've lived here ever since. So I guess you could say I have a little bit of the California vibes with family, but mostly on the East Coast.
do you still have family back out west?
Yeah, the majority I would say are located in California, but we're kind of sprinkled all over the country, and we've got a little bit in Canada.
Oh yeah, that's where our company is in Canada.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just in Toronto.
Oh, yeah, on the other side in Vancouver.
Definitely
Yeah,
further away.
yeah.
But that's awesome. So that's nice to have family so sprinkled out like that. And then you have a lot of places to go and visit when you want
You
to get
know,
away, right?
my family's a big fan of road trips, so I definitely have visited Ohio. We've gone to all the way to New Mexico, California, so it's
That's
been nice.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's exciting. I kind of wish they had family all over the place like that I could go and visit and do road trips with. But they're all in
Yeah.
Canada.
Yeah. I mean, that's directly up north, so.
Yeah, it's a big place to go. So right now you're just doing your um internship and you're doing schooling right now too, or
Yeah, so Maryland runs a little later into the spring, so we have classes just up until about May 17th, 18th. So I've been taking a couple online classes, and I have my internship, and unfortunately, I don't have my part-time job right now due to the outbreak that's going on, but I would be doing that as well.
that sounds like you're already pretty busy.
Yeah, it definitely forced me to slow down a little bit, which I guess I'm grateful for, but I do miss always having things to do. It just makes time go by so much faster.
That's really true. I know a lot of people right now who are quarantined or locked down and they don't have like part-time jobs or work from home capabilities, and a lot of
Hmm.
people are just getting really bored and stir crazy. So,
Yeah, I've definitely picked up a couple hobbies because, when your classes end, what else do I have to do? Sometimes the
right.
weather hasn't really been that good. So, just trying to keep myself busy and trying to make the most of this time.
Yeah, I think that's the best approach to really do that, because otherwise you're just gonna get in that, that funk that a lot of people are
Yeah,
right now, and it's very unfortunate.
and it's hard. It's hard for students when you get into a funk and you still have assignments. And, sometimes I feel like there's so many people who are being impacted by this, and I'm over here worrying about an essay. And you have to kind of
Right.
remind yourself that, like, you're doing this for a reason, and this is all going to end eventually, but you got to get those grades and you got to do what you need to do.
Yeah, exactly. And you just gotta keep going and think positively, and it's a really great outlook on that.
Yeah.
So good for
Well,
you.
I'm trying. We get into a funk sometimes.
Everyone does. It happens to the
Yeah.
best of us, so I mean, you can't really blame yourself for that, but it sounds like you're making the most out of the whole pandemic quarantine situation.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, it's a day by day thing too, right?
Yeah, it definitely is. There are some days where, I wake up really early, get all my work done, and then I still have energy to do some form of exercise. But then there's other days where I have laid in bed for hours, and, by 4 o'clock, I'm like, all right, I need to do something today. But I
You just need
think,
to get up.
yeah, one thing that I do try and keep in my mind is my mom told me, if you do one thing, if you just do one thing and you're having a bad day, but just get one thing done, and then hopefully tomorrow you can get another thing, and then by the end of the week you've gotten your list done.
I think that's a really, really great outlook too, because
Yeah.
you don't have to be super productive, but even just doing one little thing can really make a difference and make you feel better too.
Yeah. And I think a lot of students might feel bad about themselves for maybe not putting as much effort as we did when we would go to, courses on campus, or even in high school, or, even I guess middle schoolers might even feel it. But I think the most important part is that you got to understand, this is all bigger than us. And, if you just get something done, it's better than nothing. And we don't have to be so hard on each other, because, I mean, I've talked to business executives who are struggling to do things, and I know that not everyone's response to this is going to be productive, because
Right.
everyone is kind of dealing with this on their own level.
Yeah, definitely. That's really true too. And I saw it was like a social media post or something, and it was someone had posted something like, if you don't come out of this quarantine with a new skill and a new this and a new that, then you
Hmm.
wasted your time. And it was like, that's really not the right
Yeah.
approach right now. Like you can't just be putting people down for not being overly productive when everyone's, scared or anxious or worried.
Yeah. And I think a lot of that is some, like, I'm personally, like, I'm pretty detached from the virus personally. I don't know people who have gotten it, but there are people whose family members are in the hospital and they're unable to see them. And a lot of, and like people with mental illness, I have anxiety pretty badly. So sometimes, it's hard for me to do things that I normally would have. And, everyone is dealing with this their own way. So I think just understanding that not everyone is going to be as happy about staying in their bedroom all day or staying at home. And, for some people, it's much more enjoyable for them given
Right.
the circumstances. But I think it is important, especially for students, to know that do the best you can, and the whole world is changing from this, so no one's really going to judge how you dealt with it after.
Yeah, definitely. That's some really great advice. And I think a lot of students really need to hear that right now. So that's super, super helpful for them. So on that note, with, life lessons for students right now, or maybe future students,
Hmm.
what would you say makes university different from high school?
Oh, okay. I would say from my personal experience in high school, everything is so rigid. You personally, like, I would wake up at 5:30 every morning. You go to school 7:20, it goes till 2. practice until 4, go home, homework. So every single day it's the same. And I would say in college, you have classes 2 days a week, 3 days a week, sometimes 1 day a week, and then you have all that extra time. And so I think the difference in college is, especially if you go to a 4-year, if you live on campus, that is your home. So sometimes what I found during my first year was separating home from school was a little difficult. And I found that, I would be in my dorm room sitting at my desk doing work for hours and hours. And you have to sometimes separate. Like, what I did basically is find a space, a cafe, outside, a library, somewhere where you can do work and have that be your school. And then you go back or you go home or wherever it is that you're staying, and you have that be your home space. I think separating work and home is really important for just your mental clarity. And I could never do work sitting in my bed, because that's like your relaxation space. You sleep there.
Right.
You need that space to decompress. So I think it's really important, just the separation between high school and college is, you don't go anywhere. You're on campus a lot, or like if you're not on campus, you're commuting, and you need to have that separation.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think right now too, because a lot of students are doing doing online lectures and classes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a big thing that people need to kind of keep in mind too. Of course, if you're doing an online class at home, you can't really just get up and go to the library, but
Right.
you can try to make do with what you have and try to find a space that you just associate just with studying or just with doing your
Yeah.
school. And that can
Yeah.
really
And
help you, right?
that's something that I've been struggling with. Like I just said, I can't do work in my room. I see my room as my relaxation space, and like I've decorated it to where it's like something there that makes me happy. And
Right.
so what I've been trying to do is, my apartment is pretty small, but on the couch, by the chair, or at the dinner table, just to get some sort of like difference in what I'm seeing. And then hopefully when the weather lightens up, go outside and try and just change the scenery a little bit, I think is important. But
Yeah.
I think that, especially when you transition from high school to college, is having a schedule that's not rigid, and one that you are in charge of and no one else is in charge of,
Right.
is something that's really important that you manage well. I know a couple people that just, they weren't able to adjust and time manage, and they suffer from it. So I think having good time management skills and knowing, okay, this is serious time, this is playtime, can really make the difference. Especially now, it's hard. The days mesh together,
Yeah.
like the days go by so quickly. So I think having a schedule is really helpful.
Yeah, because there's that accountability factor
Hmm.
more in university than it is in high school, where if you fail, it's that's on you.
That's your money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Classes are expensive. I think a couple of the ones that I was taking are like between $300 and $5 each, $500 each, and pay for textbooks. You got to pay for sometimes readings, and if you aren't able to do well, then it's not like high school where it's like, oh, I'll just retake it. It's like you retake it, that's more money. And I
Right.
think knowing that college is like, oh, this is real time, and high school, it's still real, but it's more prep. It's like
Yeah.
you prep for high school. But this is definitely more of, what you're doing now is really going to set you up for the future.
Right. Yeah, that's really important to remember. On a more positive note,
Yeah.
what's your favorite university memory so far?
I would have to say that I think it was the third or fourth week of my freshman year. My dorm faced the outdoor volleyball courts, and the sun was going down, and a couple of my friends and I were like, let's go play volleyball. And it was like a Monday night, but in college, like weeks of the days they're
Right.
very different.
Yeah.
So we were outside playing for hours, and like the sun went down and everyone was having a good time. And I think that was a really fun part, because I was playing with people that I'd never talked to before, and people like on your floor you get really close with. But
Mhm.
it was so interesting because those people I never really talked with again. But I think that's the fun part of college, is that you meet so many people that most times your relationships aren't going to be permanent, but what they are is really fun. You know,
Yeah.
play for a night or two. You have work friends, you have class friends that you you might see in another class, but if not, they were good for that time. And I think it's just fun to meet so many different people.
Yeah, and those people maybe people you might have never even said hi to in the halls of high school,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. They're people that, I mean, I had a bunch of different friends in high school, but then you see your friend group dwindles and it gets really small as you get
Yeah.
older. And that's something that I'm experiencing now. But I think it was really fun because the first couple weeks and months of college, I interacted with more different people and learned more things than I ever had. And I think that's so valuable because
Yeah.
you learn so many things that you didn't even know. And I just think I really appreciated that.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's probably one of the best advantages about college and university, I think for a lot of people, is just everyone you meet has an opportunity to, you know, teach you something or give you some kind of outlook on life that you may have never realized before. And
Yeah.
everyone is just so much more open. So you
Yeah, that's
be friends with
definitely
so many
true.
people.
Yeah, I love, and especially Maryland. I mean, we're a huge school, what, 40,000 undergrads. So we've got tons of people on campus, and I mean, I've had classes that are like 14 people, and then I've had classes that are like 350. So it definitely varies. But I think just like the people you meet in classes outside of class, and then you find yourself seeing the same people on campus, and I just think it's a really valuable thing to know.
Yeah, no, I would have to agree with you there. That's makes you feel more warm and welcome, and it gives you a more
Yeah.
enjoyable experience out of the whole university life experience.
Yes, it really does. It makes kind of like a big university feel a little bit smaller.
Yeah, and that's sometimes a really good thing because it just feels like a home instead of just a place
Yeah.
studying.
Yeah. I mean, I like to think so. I'm in the School of Public Policy at Maryland.
Mhm.
I'm hoping to go into possibly government work or nonprofits, but hopefully environmental policy.
Mhm.
But my school has 300 people in it, and that's within the university. So I feel like I get the best of both worlds, where I go to a huge college, but at the end of the day, my professors know me my name.
Right.
So I think that's something that I really, really enjoy at Maryland, and that I think um, if students are looking for majors and they're torn between going to a really small school or a really big one, like just play around with it and look around to see like how big is your school, or like what are the professors like, because at the end of the day you can go anywhere, but the connections you make with professors and having them know you and able to write you letters and to talk really well about you when you're not around is so much more important.
Hmm. And those reference letters and recommendations and stuff is important too from professors, especially if you want to, even if it's not about getting a job, but it's about maybe going to a graduate program or
Yeah.
a PhD program. You need professors to give you references. So you may as well work
Yeah,
on those
I've
connections.
I've had to ask my professors so many times for letters, for even scholarships, for, you know, um, other programs at the university, maybe jobs, maybe internships. But pretty much everything you're going to have to apply for requires a letter of recommendation. So it's
Right.
really nice when you talk to your professors and you get to know them. And when they can say, oh, that girl is whoever, like whatever, it's nice to know that they actually know who you are.
Yeah, and they're willing to, they obviously believe in you enough that they're willing to write you that recommendation letter.
Yeah.
That's a big confidence booster too.
Yes. Yeah, it helps.
Yeah, definitely. What about any struggles or challenges that you faced as a student? I know we were talking about um, the time management aspect of university and having to be accountable for yourself, but are there any other kind of struggles or challenges that you faced as a university student so far?
Other than the big one, which I would say is sometimes financially, college is very
Right,
expensive no
right,
matter who you are. So I think I've definitely had to put in a decent number of hours at work, which it's rewarding in itself, and I love my job. But I
right,
would say um, the biggest challenge is during midterms and finals week. You really start to
right.
get down on yourself because you're putting in hours, you're studying, sometimes really late, sometimes really early, over and over the same information. And I think the biggest challenge with that is more of a mental challenge,
Right.
especially as you get towards the end of midterm week, where it's your last exam and you're already tired and you've already done so much and you feel like your brain can't consume any more information, but you push, and then you finish. And I think one way that I've really helped with that is get a planner and just write everything down. Plan everything, because knowing what you have to do and writing it down can make all the difference. I have forgotten a couple assignments because at the time I remembered them, and then a couple hours later when it's 11:30 and they're due at midnight and I'm like, oh my gosh, I did not turn that in.
Right.
So I think definitely the biggest challenge is college is not easy, and your classes, some might be more easy, but generally they're challenging and they do challenge you. But I think it's important to go into them knowing that they're difficult. You don't take Econ 200, which has a pretty big fail rate, and
Right.
go into that thinking, I'm going to ace it, I'm going to do well. You go into it knowing that, and then you put in the work.
Right.
And I remember at some point someone told me, like, people think work is a bad word, but it's like, no, you put in the work and you get the results. And so I think, just to reiterate, just the biggest challenge is putting in the time, and once you've put in the time, finishing strong. I think
Right.
that's definitely something that I've gotten down about myself with, and I've seen my friends, and you just have to keep motivating each other and pushing each other. And then at the end of the semester, like, oh my gosh, the relief when everything is done, it's so nice.
And then you just get
So
to have a
nice.
break and relax.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the harder you work, the more relaxing that break is really going to be, and the more
Oh
valuable,
my gosh.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, and then just to add on to that, I think sometimes the biggest challenge is only in the first semester when you're transitioning from high school to college.
Right.
Luckily, I went to a really good high school in the way that they prepared us very well for college, and the work was really rigorous in high school, so my transition was a little more smooth. But I definitely had to help some friends out when they were struggling, and just like the course load and the amount of writing. I think I would recommend people to touch up on grammar and writing before they come to college, because that is a huge thing.
Right.
Yeah, you're definitely going to be writing so much more than you ever have. But I think that's just, the transition is probably the most difficult.
Yeah, that little jump, and it takes a lot of getting used to, especially if you were like a certain type of person in high school. And I know for a lot of people, it's people who get away with it, doing
Oh,
it
yeah.
at the last minute in high school, or not doing anything and just skating by, and then they get to university and they're in this kind of culture shock almost.
Yes, the floaters. Yeah, you
Yeah.
definitely cannot float your way through college. You have to put in the time. I would say that.
Yeah. I think that was a
Yeah.
really good point that you brought up too, about how a lot of people think that work is a negative word, but it's not. It's
Mhm.
something that it's the effort you put into something. And I think that's a really good way to think about that, is that people, you know, people, even when it's not about schoolwork, when it's just about work, people are always
Mhm.
just like so grudgingly like, all right, well, I gotta work. But people should be looking at it as a way of, I'm doing my part, I'm working really hard, and I'm gonna earn whatever comes to me.
Yeah, I mean, I like to make a point or to say something, and they're reading my papers and they can tell that I've read the material, which is a big thing. Lots of kids don't read.
Right.
Then I think it really does make a difference, because first of all, you're getting more out of the class. And these classes are supposed to prepare you for work. And so if you're just getting the grades that you need and you're not really taking anything out of it, then you're going to be less prepared when you apply for a job, because you're not really utilizing that material.
Right.
Um, and if you take pride in your work and you put effort into it, you're going to be such a more well-rounded person, because you're just going to have that background and you're going to have that backbone of, I'm going to do this work not because I need to and it's annoying, but because I want to, because it gets me to that next level.
Right.
And I think when I was in high school, for me, that next level was college. I didn't want to read 30 chapters of my AP biology book, but I did, because that was the knowledge I needed to get those credits to then
Right.
graduate.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's looking at that bigger picture is really the important
Yeah.
way there too, right?
Yeah. It can be difficult sometimes when you're, bogged down in your textbook to think like, oh, this is so annoying. Why am I doing this? But, why are you there? Why are you at this school? Why this school in particular? And it's because at the end of the day, you want something higher and you want something that's going to benefit you and maybe your family and maybe someone else that you know, or even yourself. I think doing work for yourself is really important.
Yeah, that's really important. Because otherwise, what are you doing? You're doing everything. When you're at
Exactly.
school or you're at university, you're doing it to further your own career or your own life, right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you're doing it for you. And I think that's a lot of people probably don't remember that, or maybe they
Hmm.
don't think about that regularly. So yeah,
Yeah.
important.
It's hard to remember that all the time.
Hmm. That brings me to my next question, which is, so for those looking to go to college or university, would you say that it's beneficial, or is it worth it?
I think it would depend on what your long-term goal is. Um, I've known people, two of my uncles, who've gone to 2 years of community college and then transferred. And that is something that I think is pretty important if money is an issue or if you're just not ready with your major, you don't know what you want to do. Because the first 2 years are just gen eds usually.
Hmm.
So I think if you're kind of unsure of what you want to do, but you might want to go to college, try community college. Um, and then I know some people in my family, it just hasn't been for them, so maybe a trade school. But I think if you're interested in something where you see yourself needing an education, I would say college is definitely beneficial, especially if you have a passion or you have something that you think, even if it's just a degree in, you can get like communications, business, something that could give you a skill so that all of the possibilities open up to you.
Right.
I know myself personally, my major is a bit more broad. I didn't go with government and politics, and I didn't go with like political science. I wanted public policy so I could do nonprofits, or I could do government, or I could do private organizations, or even go to law school. So, I mean, I don't really know exactly where my path is taking me yet, but
Right.
I wanted to make sure I gave myself options. And growing up, that's something my dad used to stress all the time is, he didn't go to college and he didn't do that. But the biggest thing is give yourself options because, 10, 20 years from now, I don't know where I'll be, but I'll know that I'll have those steps where I have a platform now.
You built
So,
yourself a foundation. You
exactly.
obviously have a clear idea of what you want to do or part, which kind of field you want to be in. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So I think if you have an idea, then use that idea to give yourself, more options. And if you are unsure, I would say, if you're in high school and you don't really know if you want to go to college yet or if college is feasible, there are people who will help you make it happen, no matter what. I know my guidance counselor did an amazing job, and she gave me so many, like, she gave me access, and I think that's the biggest thing. She gave me access to scholarships. They had them all printed out, and I applied for any one that I could, like any possible scholarship.
yeah,
She gave me information and she gave me the motivation. And I think those three things are really important for high schoolers who are kind of unsure and they don't really know if they can.
right. Yeah, because it's a big investment to take if you don't think it's going to be right for you.
Yeah. And it's intimidating. Even applications
Yeah.
have fees, so it's really intimidating for a lot of students. But I think going back to like putting in the work, if you really are like committed and it's something that you think would be beneficial, then I really do recommend it.
Yeah, awesome. So going back to when we were talking about, those stressful finals weeks and test anxiety, how much time do you think that you actually do spend studying?
Oh my goodness. How much time? Okay, so I would say if it's a regular week and there's no exams, schoolwork probably takes me between 2 and 4 hours a day. And I'm
Right.
putting in readings, I'm doing assignments, things like that. If it's a midterm or a finals week, then I really amp the studying up, and that's between 6 to 10 a day. I'll be in the library, yeah, in between classes, weekends, just studying time. So that it can be difficult. And I think coffee was definitely something I was relying on. um,
Yeah.
and I'm off that now because there's no reason to at home.
Right.
But yeah, lots of coffee got me through very long days. But I think that's part of the reason you're able to sit there and study for all days. You have a plan. I would go there and I'd be like, all right, the first 2 hours I'm doing ecosystems, or the second 2 hours I'm doing writing or reading or whatever it is. And then, give yourself, I'd go to the library and then I would give myself a break, go down, get a snack, go back up and keep going. Or if you get really boggled down, take a walk and then come back down, couple deep breaths. But I was putting in a lot of hours, but you got to think the amount of time you put in is equivalent to what you get on the exams.
Right.
And so I have no regrets about those long days. I remember I would leave the library and call my dad, and he'd be like, "What are you up to?" And I'm like, "Just walking back. I'm dead." But sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
Right. And if you look back, like when you look back on that, all of that
Mhm.
studying, when you look back, like, I don't know, 10 years later, that's just a little portion of your life that you spent, that you sacrificed
Oh
for,
yeah.
like, a big payoff.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah, like I might have, I've missed a football game or two or some event because I
Yeah.
was busy studying. But I mean, you get an A on an exam that's really hard, and if you do that in the beginning of the semester, well, gosh, you're set up for the rest of the semester because you've
Right.
gotten that high grade. And I think if I was going to give some advice, I would definitely say study hard in the beginning, if anything, while you've got that motivation. Set yourself up well, and then when it comes finals week and you're really tired and you've got all of this due, you don't have to get so high to get the grade you need.
Right. Yeah, that makes
So,
a lot of sense. I think that's really good advice for any kind of student, really, no matter what you're studying
oh,
or
yeah.
where.
Yeah, definitely can say that it's a college is a roller coaster and the motivation goes down, but you got to keep
Yeah.
pushing it up. So, I like to start strong and see what I can do, circumstances permitting. I
Right.
mean, now it's a little difficult, but I think
Of course.
this is that example of you just have to keep pushing. Lots of schools are almost done, and we're about to enter May, and this is really the final push.
Yeah, because a lot of people, everything is still like, just because it's online doesn't mean it's, I think that a lot of people um, could probably fall into that trap of thinking, of not taking those classes so seriously just because they're online. But a lot of people, I think, need to realize that it's still an important, still a
Yeah.
major part of your degree.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, sometimes I can find myself slipping a little bit and, the effort slips a little, but I think definitely just reminding myself of these are still important. You still need to get this done. And then, like I said, we're in May. Colleges are finishing up now. So a lot of people are in finals, and this is really the time to kick it into overdrive and get what you need to get.
Yeah, definitely. If you could go back and talk to your 15-year-old self, what would you say?
Oh my gosh. When I was 15. I think I would say, well, okay, so me personally, I've always been more on the anxious side of like, oh, I have to, very serious. I've always been very serious with my work because, I really wanted to go to college and I wanted to get into a good school. So from the time I entered high school, I was just work, work, work. And, I joined clubs, I did sports, I did all of that. But I think if I could go back and tell myself something, it would be to just have a little fun now and then, like balance it out, but you'd be surprised at how important like SAT and essays are over grades. And, if you get a bad grade, it's not the end of the world. It really isn't. And you can still get into a great school and you can still do what you need to do and not have to stress over it. And I think the biggest thing would be that, you're 15, you're 16, you're 17, you're young, you're supposed to make
Right.
mistakes. Like, you're not going to be perfect. And I think if you are looking at like a higher education, then if you are going to stress over things, maybe it would be your essay, maybe it's your SAT. But I think a mistake I made was I was very like hardworking and stressful over everything. And I think I definitely didn't enjoy high school as much as I could have.
Right. Of
Granted, everything happens for a reason.
course.
I'm here the way I am now. But I think if one advice would be to enjoy those years that you have while you live with your parents, while you're with your siblings or whoever it is that you live with. And then don't rush for college, because it's going to be there. It's been there. And once you get there, I don't live at home anymore. Sometimes I miss my family, but I think it's important to enjoy your youth while also taking it seriously.
Yeah, so enjoy your current where you are now and just enjoy the moment as much as
Yeah.
you can.
Yeah.
That's really, I think that's probably something everybody should, no matter how old you are, I think everyone should
Yeah.
kind of should be more should think about that more often.
Yeah, I mean, I try to now. I'm trying to live in the moment, but sometimes it's difficult. You do the best you can.
Of course. Um, so what are your current short-term and long-term goals? I know you said that you were obviously you're finishing up your program and your internship and stuff. So what are those goals right now? What did that look like?
Right. So I guess short-term goal would be I secured a summer job, which was like, oh, thank gosh, especially
Right.
during this time.
Right.
But finish that out, and then I'm always looking, what's the next semester? So next semester, got to find internships, do something like that. But I think long term, I am currently working on applying to get a joint master's and bachelor's degree. So that's a program where I need to, like I said, secure reference letters and send in a bunch of information, and then hopefully graduate with a bachelor's and master's before I'm 22. So that would be helpful.
Right. What program would that be? The master's, bachelor's?
So my bachelor's is in public policy with a specialization in sustainability. And my master's would also be in public policy, that it'd be more focused on environmental policy.
Okay.
So I'm getting that general bachelor's degree with a little minor, and then I'm getting a more focused graduate degree so that hopefully I can enter the industry with like, okay, I've got this and this background, and I have this knowledge from all my internships, and hopefully, like I said, give myself a good foundation.
That's awesome. I think that's really useful right now. I think that, sustainability and environmental consciousness, I guess, is the word I'm looking
Hmm.
for. But I think that's a really important part of government policy everywhere today. And I mean, if you are a government and you don't have some kind of sustainability platform, I think that you're really lacking a conversation that needs to be had in
Yeah,
politics.
I agree, especially in our country. Like, well, you're in Canada, but the United States is we're a very diverse country, and
Yeah,
lots of like economic disparities, and we have racial disparities right now, and you can link back a lot of issues to the environment. And there's environmental justice, and there's a lot of issues where different communities are being impacted by things that I couldn't even think of.
right.
So I think going into more environmental work in our government is really important, not even for us, but for the whole world. It's something that everyone shares. And I think by not having a good foundation in environmental studies with people who are running the country, I think that's just setting not only our country up for failure, but everyone else, because
Right.
these are pressing issues.
And the US is such a powerful country too, right? So,
Yeah, so much influence. I feel
yeah,
like if we took control and we really put a good foot forward, a lot of other countries would respect it and would join in.
and set a really positive example.
Yeah,
That's awesome. That sounds like you're going to do a lot of great things.
I hope so.
I
I
hope
hope
so for
so.
you. I hope so.
Yeah.
We'll have to check back with you in like 5 years and see where you're at.
Yeah, give me a couple years. Let me get some more
Okay, we'll
experience.
say 10 years
Yeah.
and then we'll see where you are. Um, so do you have any favorite motivational quotes or sayings or anything? I know you mentioned some already, um, like about work and time management.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else that you like
Yeah.
to
I
add?
think I have, so there's one that um I heard a while ago. It's by Eleanor Roosevelt. No one can make you inferior without your consent. I
Hmm.
think that is a huge thing, not only for students who might be intimidated by the college process. And, no matter where you come from, like if you got into that school, you belong at that school, period. Like there's no one who can make you feel like you don't belong where you got accepted. And I think it's important that, if you're in higher level courses, if you're engaging with if you have internships or jobs with political figures and they're very intimidating, but you have to remember that at one point everyone was where you were, and you can't get to where that is without being where you are. So like something I have to remind myself when I'm talking to people that scare the heck out of me is they are also, at one point they were probably intimidated.
Yeah.
And it's important to just know that you belong there and like you were chosen for a reason and do the work you need to do.
I think that's very humbling too. And I think it's a good thing to remember, especially in an industry like what you're in, where you're talking to you're probably talking to organization leaders or, important politicians and people who are, you're probably looking at them like you have a lot of power and scary, but they were not always like that.
And I think especially as women entering positions of power and leadership, especially in the government, wherever that may be, you don't have to prove that you belong there to belong there. And I think sometimes I'll be on calls where everyone is a very powerful male, and I'm 20 years old and an intern, and I have to remind myself that I don't need to prove that I belong on this call to take notes and things like that. And I've seen other very strong women political figures, and they do what they're very serious and they get what they need to get done. And some of them are scrutinized for that, but I think it's important because as a woman entering the world of public policy, you need to know you belong before you even make it in. Like you have to be confident in yourself. And I think that's something that I'm still learning, because sometimes I get very intimidated, but I'm working on it. Every time I engage with someone, I'm working on it and knowing that what I'm doing, I care about, and other people should care about it too.
That's awesome. I think that's very inspiring for a lot of people, and I think that will really inspire a lot of our listeners. So thank you for sharing that.
I hope so. Yeah.
I just had one last question, and it's more of a fun question.
Okay.
And it's something we usually end with our interviews. What is your favorite social media platform and why?
Oh, Twitter. I love Twitter for the memes. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. I will sit there, scroll on the memes, send them to my boyfriend, send them to my friends. I love the memes. They're so funny.
That's so funny. That's because most of the time when we ask that question, we always get like, Instagram or your Snapchat.
Yeah.
And I think you
No,
might be Twitter.
Maybe it's I don't know. I love Twitter. It's also funny because I follow some of my high school teachers on there, and they are amazing. I love them, so they post really funny stuff. But yeah, definitely Twitter. I love that. Love that app.
That's it. Well, I mean, you're in like government and policy and stuff like that, and that a lot of people who use Twitter are politicians and like media figures and stuff like that. So that's
that's definitely an interesting switch, being politicians on Twitter. But I mean, hey, they have funny content sometimes. So
and it's digestible. You can just scroll through and look at it really quickly, and you don't have to read through annoying Facebook updates.
Oh yeah, 52 characters or less.
Yep, short and sweet, to the point. I like it. I like that.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else that you wanted to add before we kind of wrap things up?
I think if I were just going to say one thing to wrap everything up, it would be sometimes when you're in college, you might feel guilty for not going home as often, or for not, reaching out to your friends, or even during quarantine. I know some people haven't really been, texting a lot or hanging out with their friends, obviously. But I think college is where, my uncle told me that you're making sacrifices right now, but so is your family, so that everyone can benefit later. And I think it's important to, do what you need to do in college, study, work, but don't feel guilty about, maybe not texting your parents as much, or maybe not, I have two brothers, so sometimes I feel guilty about not, calling them or texting them. but they know I'm busy and they know that I'm working hard. And so I think if one thing I could say is don't feel guilty for pursuing your degree and doing any means necessary. Don't feel bad for staying up late and not responding to something that you might want to, or don't feel bad for missing a call if you're busy, because at the end of the day, when you're graduating and getting your degree, it's going to benefit your whole community, not just you.
Right. Yeah, I think that's something definitely to remember. And also too, just because you're not talking to, just because you're maybe a little distant or not communicating too often with family, doesn't mean that you're not there for them. And if they know
Right.
that, they will always know that you will still be there if they do need something from you.
Yeah, I mean, I think about everyone all the time. It's just sometimes I'm like, oh, I have 17 things to do. I don't really, have the time to reach out. But yeah, I think that's an important thing to remember.
Definitely. Well, thank you for sharing that. So I think that pretty much wraps it up. I want to thank you so much for joining me today and sharing all of those amazing insights with
Yeah,
our.
thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be on this. Like I said, I really enjoyed doing this interview and helpfully giving good advice.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really, really valuable to anybody. I don't even think don't even have to be a student to really gain a lot of insight from that. So we really appreciate that. And we appreciate you making the time to talk to us. And we'll keep in touch with you. And maybe we'll talk to you, a little later down the road and see where you're at. And
who knows?
See how it's worked out for you.
Yeah, who knows? That would be really nice.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Take care. Stay safe. Hopefully it's all over soon.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.